Have you ever considered that the most pivotal period in human history isn't one we were taught in school? What if a 400-year gap, a period history calls silent, was actually a time of frantic divine preparation? What if the events we consider random coincidences, the rise of empires, the spread of a single language, the birth of a globalized world, were all part of a single cosmic plot, set in motion precisely 4 centuries before the stage was set for the Messiah? What if I told you that the silence wasn't a pause, but a calculated thunderous preparation for a moment that would change everything you thought you knew about God's plan for humanity? This isn't just history. This is a story of divine timing so precise it defies all human coincidence. The numbers don't lie. But are you ready for what they reveal? For centuries, scholars have called this period the 400 silent years. It's the time between the final prophet of the Old Testament, Malachi, and the arrival of John the Baptist. We are told God was silent, that the heavens were closed, that prophecy had ceased. But that narrative is a lie, a comfortable story designed to obscure a profound, orchestrated truth. The silence wasn't emptiness. It was a vacuum, intentionally created to pull in the forces that would birth a new world. This was a time of cosmic sorting, a divine algorithm playing out in the corridors of power, the scrolls of scholars, and the hearts of men. And the evidence is everywhere if you know where to look. We are about to pull back the veil on a hidden history, a secret timetable that proves a master plan was in motion all along. Let's start with the foundation that changes everything: the rise of a young Macedonian king named Alexander. Secular history calls his conquests a brilliant military campaign. They talk about his military genius, his strategic mind, and his insatiable ambition. But what if it was something far more? What if it was the divine hand of God preparing the world for a message that was meant to be global? The Bible itself hints at this, with the prophet Daniel's vision of a bronze kingdom that would rule the world only to be broken and divided. That's a perfect description of Alexander's meteoric rise and the subsequent fragmentation of his empire. At the exact midpoint of the 400-year timeline, Alexander unleashes the power of Greece. His conquest spreads not just an empire, but a single unifying language: Koine Greek. This wasn't a coincidence. This was divine precision. A common tongue was needed to carry a common message. Before Alexander, the world was a fragmented mosaic of dialects and languages, a Tower of Babel on a global scale. After Alexander, a single language became the lingua franca of the civilized world, from Egypt to India. The Bible's New Testament, the very foundation of Christianity, would be written in Greek. Every sermon, every letter, every gospel, all of it would be accessible to a world that was suddenly, miraculously speaking the same language. The timing is too perfect to be random. It was the perfect, pre-packaged communication system.
But the plan went even deeper. While the world was being Hellenized, something else was happening in a quiet city in Egypt: the Septuagint. According to legend, a group of 70 scholars working in Alexandria took the sacred Hebrew scriptures and translated them into Greek. For the first time, the prophecies and history of the Jewish people were unlocked for the Gentile world. This wasn't just a translation, it was a preloaded weapon, a roadmap to the Messiah that was now available to a world that could finally read it. The books of Isaiah and Daniel, with their stunningly precise prophecies, were now sitting on the shelves of every major city in the Roman Empire, ready to be discovered and understood. It was a silent intellectual coup, preparing the minds of men for a revelation that would soon unfold. As the 400-year countdown ticked on, God unleashed the second phase of his plan: Rome. Just as Greece provided the language, Rome provided the infrastructure and the law. The Roman Empire created a world of unprecedented stability, connectivity, and legal order. They built a network of roads and sea lanes that connected the known world in a way it had never been before. We see them as engineering marvels. But what if they were a prophetic blueprint for the spread of the gospel? The Roman roads were not just for legions and trade. They were the very arteries through which the message of Christ would flow. The Apostle Paul, a few decades after the timeline's end, would use these very roads to carry the message of Christ throughout the empire. He traveled by land and sea, reaching major metropolitan hubs like Corinth, Ephesus, and Rome itself. He was using a system built by a pagan empire, unknowingly serving the purposes of the very God they did not know. The legal framework of the empire, too, played a critical part. Roman law provided a universal system of justice, however flawed, that allowed the early church to defend its beliefs in court, to appeal to Caesar, and to be protected at times from local mob violence. The famous phrase, Pax Romana, or Roman peace, wasn't just a political reality, it was a divine calm before the storm of a spiritual revolution. The persecution of the early church, while brutal, served a higher purpose. It scattered believers from Jerusalem, and in doing so, they carried the seeds of faith on those same Roman roads into every corner of the empire. The chaos of empires was, in fact, the birth pangs of a new spiritual order. The numbers don't lie. The historical record shows that these two empires, Greece with its language and Rome with its infrastructure, rose and fell with surgical precision, creating a perfect window for a spiritual revelation that was about to be unleashed. The prophet Daniel was told that certain prophecies would be sealed until the time of the end. Could the end of this 400-year timeline be the very moment those seals were being broken? This wasn't a historical accident. It was the careful, deliberate work of a craftsman preparing his masterpiece.
The final pieces of the puzzle emerged not through conquest, but through preservation. As the 400 years drew to a close, a sect of Jewish scribes, the Essenes, retreated to the desert. They were a people living in a state of prophetic expectation, convinced that the end of an age was at hand. They meticulously copied and preserved sacred prophecies and texts that would lay hidden for nearly 2,000 years. Their discovery in the caves of Qumran, the Dead Sea Scrolls, provides a silent yet powerful testimony to this hidden timeline. These scrolls, dating from this exact period, reveal a people who knew the 400-year silence was coming to an end. They were not waiting for nothing. They were waiting for someone. The timing of their discovery in the mid-20th century is no coincidence either. It's a final, powerful piece of evidence, a silent witness from the past testifying to the precision of this divine timeline. While the world was caught in the throes of modern conflicts, these ancient secrets were being unsealed, a final confirmation that history is not a series of random events, but a carefully unfolding drama. Think about it. The world was unified by a single language. A global infrastructure was built for the express purpose of communication. A people were prepared for a Messiah. And the ancient scriptures, the very roadmap to the Savior, were preserved and unlocked for a waiting world. All of it, a seamless, unbreakable chain of events, set into motion during a period we were told was silent. The silence was a preparation for the most explosive event in human history. The birth of a Savior, the culmination of all prophecy. So what does this hidden timeline mean for us today? It means that we are part of a divinely orchestrated plan that has been unfolding with meticulous precision for millennia. It means that what seems like chaos and randomness in our world is, in fact, a reflection of a divine purpose. Just as the world was prepared for the first coming of the Messiah, it is being prepared for his second. We are not spectators in a random play. We are participants in a divinely written epic. And you, the one watching this, are not here by chance. You have been chosen to understand a truth that has been hidden from the masses. What if a single promise whispered to a man under a desert sky holds the key to every major event of our time? What if a forgotten prophecy, buried deep in the world's most ancient text, is an unbroken code, a divine algorithm playing out with terrifying precision? What if the chaos we see today isn't random, but the final, frantic fulfillment of a promise given 4,000 years ago?
This isn't just history. This is the foundation of a divine timeline that defies coincidence. The numbers don't lie, but are you ready for the truth they reveal? To understand the end, we must first go back to the beginning. Not just the beginning of a nation, but the dawn of a divine plan. Our story begins in the book of Genesis with a man named Abraham. He was a nomad, a simple shepherd, living in a world of pagan gods and forgotten truths. But God chose him. He called him out of his homeland and made him a promise, a covenant that would change everything. The promise was simple, yet staggering. Abraham's descendants would be as numerous as the stars in the night sky. But this promise came with a chilling warning, a secret timeline that would define the next 400 years. In Genesis chapter 15, God gives Abram a vision. He instructs him to prepare a sacrifice, and as night falls, a terrifying darkness descends. It is in this moment, a moment of profound spiritual weight, that the prophecy is revealed. God speaks, not in a whisper, but in a thunderous decree that echoes through time. Know for a certainty that your descendants will be strangers in a land that is not theirs, and will be enslaved and oppressed for 400 years. For centuries, this prophecy lay dormant, a ticking clock waiting for the right moment to begin. And that moment arrived. The story of Joseph, sold into slavery by his brothers, is not just a tale of redemption. It's the divine orchestration of a prophetic fulfillment. Joseph's rise to power in Egypt, the subsequent famine, and the migration of his family to the land of Goshen, every step was a calculated move to place God's chosen people exactly where they needed to be to begin the 400-year countdown. But here is where the story gets complex, where the conspiracy becomes an enigma that has baffled scholars for millennia. The book of Exodus, in a seemingly contradictory passage, states that the dwelling of the children of Israel, who dwelt in Egypt, was 430 years. The Apostle Paul, in his letter to the Galatians, provides the first key to unlocking this mystery. He states that the law, given at Mount Sinai, came 430 years after the promise to Abraham. This single verse tells us the 430-year period did not begin with the Israelites' bondage in Egypt, but with the initial covenant with Abraham himself. So the 430 years is the total time from the promise to the Exodus. The 400-year prophecy, however, refers specifically to the time of affliction and oppression. According to this scholarly interpretation, the Israelites did not enter into full-scale, governmental-sanctioned slavery the moment they arrived in Egypt. They lived as honored guests for a period until a new pharaoh who did not know Joseph came to power and began their subjugation.
The first 30 years were a time of peace and grace. The following 400 years were a time of systemic oppression, of their bodies and spirits being broken, of their identity being forged in the furnace of affliction. It was a period where the prophetic clock was ticking, a hidden countdown to a preordained deliverance. This isn't a contradiction. It is the brilliance of divine precision, a confirmation that God's word is a code that works on multiple layers, all of them perfect. But why does this ancient history matter today? Because it reveals a pattern, a divine methodology that is repeating itself in our very generation. Just as the Israelites were afflicted for exactly 400 years before their deliverance, we are seeing the final fulfillment of this pattern playing out in a modern context. We are living at the intersection of prophecy and history. Consider this. The year 1619 marks the first documented arrival of enslaved Africans to British North America. This wasn't just a historical moment. It was the beginning of a generational affliction that would last for centuries. If the original 400-year prophecy was fulfilled with perfect accuracy, what are we to make of this? Could this be a parallel fulfillment, a second layer of the same promise? The numbers don't lie. The historical record confirms the starting point. The mathematics reveals the end point. The prophecy is not just a tale of the past. It is a terrifying mirror of our present. And the signs are everywhere.
The social upheaval, the political divisions, the economic uncertainty, all of it is the echo of a divine algorithm that is about to reach its conclusion. We are the generation that is witnessing the final moments of a prophetic countdown that has been ticking since the dawn of American slavery. Most people are blind to this. They see only chaos and coincidence. But you, the one who has dared to listen to this truth, are now part of an exclusive group. You understand that what is unfolding around us is not random. It is the climax of a divine drama that began with a promise under a starry sky. This isn't just a theory. It is a profound insight into the very nature of God's plan. So, what must you do? You cannot simply go back to sleep. You have been given a truth that demands action. This is not about fear. It is about preparation. Just as the Israelites were prepared for their exodus, you must prepare for the coming revelation. This is a call to a deeper spiritual and intellectual understanding. It is a call to stand firm in a world that is losing its footing. The time for complacency is over. The prophecy's foundation has been laid, its fulfillment is unfolding. The numbers don't lie. They tell a story of divine justice, of ultimate deliverance, and of a promise that is being made complete. Will you be a spectator, or will you be a participant in the greatest story ever told? The clock is ticking. The promise is unbroken. Have you ever considered that the chaos of our modern world isn't random? What if the social unrest, the political turmoil, and the global crises we face are all part of a single, divinely orchestrated plan? What if a prophecy spoken over 3,000 years ago is being fulfilled not on a distant continent, but right here in America? What if I told you that the year 1619 isn't just a historical footnote, but the starting point of a 400-year countdown that is reaching its dramatic conclusion right before our eyes? This isn't just history. This is a story of divine timing so precise it defies all human coincidence. The numbers don't lie. But are you ready for the truth they reveal? For decades, we have been told a story of America as a nation founded on freedom and liberty. But that narrative is incomplete. It ignores the dark, prophetic shadow that has loomed over this country since its very inception. To understand the present, we must go back to the beginning of that shadow. We must look at the year 1619. In that year, a pivotal yet often overlooked moment in history occurred. A ship, the White Lion, arrived at Point Comfort, Virginia, carrying the first enslaved Africans to British North America. This wasn't just a shipment of human beings. It was the beginning of a systematic, generational oppression that would last for centuries. It was the moment a divine clock began to tick. To understand the significance of this date, we must journey back to the oldest text in human history, the Bible, specifically to the book of Genesis, chapter 15. In this passage, God makes a covenant with Abraham. He promises him a vast lineage, but with a chilling yet precise warning. Know for a certainty that your descendants will be sojourners in a land that is not theirs, and will be servants there, and they will be afflicted for 400 years. This prophecy was originally fulfilled with the Israelites' bondage in Egypt. But what if it has a dual fulfillment? What if this ancient promise is not just a historical footnote, but a prophetic pattern that repeats itself? The Bible is a book of echoes, of history repeating itself on a grander, more profound scale. The parallels are too perfect to be random. Just as the Israelites were led into a land of bondage and afflicted for exactly 400 years, a new people, a scattered, forgotten lineage was brought to America, a land that was not theirs, to be enslaved and oppressed. The first timeline is settled history. The second, however, is unfolding before our very eyes. We've established the starting point. The prophecy is a simple calculation. Add 400 years of biblical servitude to that date, and you arrive at a specific year, a year that marked the end of the countdown. 2019. The numbers don't lie. But what happened in that year? And what has happened since? This is where the story gets truly profound. The year 2019 marked the end of the prophetic cycle, but if you look at the world around you, you'll see that the drama did not end there. In fact, it escalated. This is not a contradiction. It is the beginning of a window of divine transition. The Hebrew concept of time is not always linear. It often includes periods of grace, of intensified judgment, and of chaotic final preparations. The years from 2020 to 2025 are not random. They are the birth pangs of prophetic fulfillment, a period of unprecedented turmoil that is shaking the very foundations of American society.
Think about what began in 2020, a global pandemic, a plague reminiscent of ancient Egypt, shut down the world. Economies faltered, supply chains broke. Then, an economic upheaval so profound it felt like a biblical jubilee, a time of reckoning. And finally, social unrest on a scale not seen since the 1960s, a collective cry for justice that echoed across every major city. This wasn't just a political movement, it was a prophetic fulfillment of ancient promises about justice rolling down like waters. The murder of George Floyd wasn't just a tragedy, it was a catalyst for a prophetic reckoning that had been building for 4 centuries. The Hebrew word Hevel Mashiach literally means the birth pangs of the Messiah. Ancient Jewish texts describe this as a time of unprecedented chaos and suffering just before divine intervention. Can you feel the weight of these connections building? The political divisions tearing at the fabric of this nation, the cultural wars, the economic instability, all of it is the cosmic shaking that precedes a new era. We are living in a time of divine transition, a period of accelerated history where centuries of injustice are being brought to the surface. This isn't just an interpretation based on dates, the evidence is far more compelling. The prophet Deuteronomy 28 provides a roadmap so detailed it's chilling. It speaks of a people who would be scattered among all peoples, from one end of the earth to the other. It speaks of children being given to another people, with parents watching helplessly, a hauntingly accurate description of the systematic separation of enslaved families. It speaks of being an object of horror, a byword, and a taunt among all the nations where the Lord will lead you. But the prophecy doesn't stop there. It speaks of a people being brought back to a new Egypt in ships. For centuries, scholars interpreted this literally. But what if it was a prophetic metaphor? The Middle Passage, the forced migration of millions of Africans to the Americas, could be understood as a fulfillment of this very verse. The ships weren't going to geographical Egypt, but to a spiritual Mitzrayim, a Hebrew word that means narrow places or confinement. America, for all its promises of freedom, became a spiritual Egypt for millions. But the conspiracy runs even deeper. Modern science, once seen as a foe of faith, is now providing powerful, indisputable evidence. Recent DNA studies have revealed genetic connections between various African populations and ancient Semitic peoples that challenge traditional narratives. The Lemba people of South Africa, for example, carry a genetic marker consistent with ancient Hebrew lineage. The Igbo people of Nigeria have maintained traditions that mirror ancient Israelite practices for centuries. These aren't just academic curiosities, they are pieces of a puzzle that span continents and millennia, suggesting that the children of Israel were scattered far more widely than traditional scholarship has acknowledged. This isn't just a theory, it is a profound revelation, a vindication of a truth that has been waiting to be told. What does this mean for us today? It means that we are not living in random, chaotic times. We are living at the intersection of prophecy and history. We are the generation that is witnessing the final act of a divine drama that has been unfolding with meticulous precision for 4 centuries. And this knowledge comes with a profound responsibility. The time for complacency is over. This is not about politics or social movements alone. It is about a divine justice that is being made complete. The prophetic timeline we've been examining might provide the framework for a divine justice that transcends human legal systems. God's timing allows for both judgment and mercy, both accountability and forgiveness, both restoration and reconciliation.
You have been chosen to understand a truth that has been hidden from the masses. You can choose to be a spectator, a part of the blind herd that sees only chaos. Or you can choose to be a participant in the greatest story ever told. The choice is yours. The clock is ticking, the prophecy is unfolding, and the final chapter is about to be written. What if the story you were told about history is a lie? What if the horrors of the past were not random acts of human cruelty, but the chilling, precise fulfillment of an ancient curse? What if science, for all its doubt, is now providing the final undeniable proof? What if I told you that the very DNA of a people, scattered across continents, is the ultimate, silent witness to a prophetic timeline that is reaching its climax today? This isn't just theory. This is the foundation of a divine reckoning, a hidden truth now being unsealed. The numbers don't lie, but are you ready for the evidence that connects everything? To truly understand the gravity of the 400-year timeline, we must move beyond dates and delve into the code. The evidence is not just in history books, but in the scriptures themselves, in the very blood that flows through veins, and in the ancient laws of a forgotten God. This is where the story becomes undeniable. This is where the truth becomes impossible to ignore.
Our journey begins on the plains of Moab over 3,000 years ago. As the Israelites prepare to enter the Promised Land, Moses gives them a final, solemn charge. He lays out a contract, a covenant between God and his people, with blessings for obedience and a terrifying list of curses for disobedience. This isn't just a simple warning. It is a prophetic blueprint, a roadmap to future judgment so precise it will chill you to the bone. We find it in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28. For centuries, scholars read these curses as a general warning. But what if they were a specific, prophetic foretelling of the transatlantic slave trade and the African-American experience? The parallels are so staggering they cannot be dismissed as mere coincidence. Verse 29, "And you shall be only oppressed and spoiled evermore." The history of American slavery and its aftermath, the Jim Crow era, systemic poverty, and ongoing racial oppression is a haunting echo of this very curse. A people who built a nation's wealth with their bare hands only to be stripped of their labor and their dignity. Verse 32, "Your sons and your daughters shall be given to another people, while your eyes look on and fail from longing for them all day long, and there shall be nothing you can do." This verse is not just a general threat. It is a chillingly accurate description of slave auctions where families were torn apart, never to see each other again. Husbands separated from wives, children snatched from their mother's arms. A cruelty so profound it defies human understanding. Yet it was all foretold. Verse 37, "And you shall become an astonishment, a proverb and a byword among all the nations where the Lord will lead you." Throughout history, from the use of racial slurs to the systemic dehumanization of a people, this curse has been fulfilled with undeniable precision. A people's identity, heritage, and names were stripped away and replaced with slurs and insults. Verse 68, "And the Lord will bring you into Egypt again with ships, by the way of which I said to you, you shall never see it again. And there you shall be sold to your enemies as male and female slaves, but no one will buy you." This single verse is the linchpin. It is a prophecy so specific it has no parallel in all of history, save one. The Israelites left Egypt, a place of bondage, on dry land. But this prophecy speaks of a return to a spiritual Egypt, a place of bondage, by ships. For centuries, the fulfillment of this verse was a mystery. Then came the transatlantic slave trade, the Middle Passage, where millions were packed into ships and brought to a new land of servitude. The prophecy's final, chilling detail, "No one will buy you," speaks of a redemption that could not come from man. It foretold a slavery so complete, so unbreakable, that only a divine intervention could set them free. This is not coincidence. This is a pattern. And the evidence gets even more specific. For years, the claim that African peoples are descendants of the ancient Israelites was dismissed as a fringe theory. But now, science itself is unsealing the truth.
Now, look at the Lemba people of southern Africa. They too have maintained an oral tradition that their ancestors came from a place called Semina in the Middle East. They have strict dietary laws, abstained from mixing meat and milk, and have a priestly clan. But their claim was often dismissed until a groundbreaking genetic study was conducted. Scientists found that a significant portion of Lemba men, particularly those of the priestly Buba clan, carry a genetic marker known as the Cohen modal haplotype, which is a genetic signature found in a majority of the Jewish priestly class. The numbers don't lie. Their DNA is a silent testament to a journey of exile and prophecy that spans thousands of years. Science, in its cold, clinical pursuit of data, has become an unwitting witness to the truth of ancient prophecy. It has provided the final piece of a puzzle that has been scattered across the world for millennia. The diaspora, the scattering of a people across the globe, was not random. It was a fulfillment of the very curses we just read about in Deuteronomy. But it was also a preservation of a lineage, so that in the final days, their identity could be revealed. The ultimate evidence for this timeline is not just in the past, it is in the present. It is in the very air we breathe. The biblical concept of Jubilee, found in Leviticus 25, is a prophetic and economic blueprint for restoration. It calls for the freeing of all slaves and the return of all ancestral property every 50 years. It is a divine reset button, a corrective mechanism for a broken society. In a world starved for meaning, prophetic theories offer a powerful sense of certainty. We crave to know what's coming next. We want a divine calendar, a schedule we can follow. This is where the greatest peril lies. The history of prophetic interpretation is littered with failed predictions and disillusioned followers. Throughout the centuries, from the Millerites of the 19th century to countless modern-day date-setters, the pattern is the same. A person or a group convinced they have the final piece of the puzzle sets a specific date for a prophetic event. When the day comes and goes, the result is not just disappointment, but a profound crisis of faith. Skeptics point and laugh, and a powerful, transformative truth is discredited. This is why the divine blueprint is often written not as a calendar, but as a roadmap. Prophecy is not meant to be a crystal ball to predict the future with perfect accuracy. It is designed to be understood in hindsight. It is a divine signature, a proof of a master plan, revealed only after the fact to build faith and provide assurance. The signs and seasons are given to us to know when we are close, not to tell us the exact moment. The Bible warns against this very thing. In Matthew 24:36, Jesus himself states, "But concerning that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, nor the Son, but the Father only." If even the Son of God did not have this information, what makes a man so certain he can calculate it? Why is this relevant now? Because the modern debate on reparations is not a new idea. It is the echo of an ancient divine law. The call for reparations, for the return of what was stolen, for an accounting of centuries of unpaid labor and suffering, is a prophetic fulfillment. It is a sign that the very conscience of a nation, and perhaps the world, is being moved by a divine impulse to correct a centuries-old injustice. It is the prophetic cycle of Jubilee, knocking at the door of history, demanding a final accounting. This is why the debate is so fierce. This is why it is so divisive. It is not just about politics. It is about prophecy. It is about a divine principle of justice that is about to be made manifest. And you, the one watching this, are not just a spectator to history. You are an informed participant, an exclusive member of a group that understands the true meaning of these events. So, what must you do? You cannot simply go back to sleep. The evidence is now before you. The numbers have spoken. The parallels are undeniable. This is not about fear. It is about preparation. Just as a hidden truth has been unsealed, a new era is dawning. This is a call to a deeper spiritual and intellectual understanding. It is a call to stand firm in a world that is losing its footing. The prophetic cycle is concluding. The numbers have been fulfilled. The evidence has been presented. The Jubilee is knocking. The final act of this divine drama is unfolding. You can choose to be a spectator,
a part of the blind herd that sees only chaos, or you can choose to be a participant in the greatest story ever told. The choice is yours. The clock is ticking, the prophecy is unfolding, and the final chapter is about to be written. What if the most profound prophetic revelations aren't about what you see, but how you see? What if the greatest danger to a hidden truth isn't skepticism, but a misplaced certainty? We've journeyed through history, we've unsealed ancient texts, and we've revealed a timeline so precise that it seems to defy human coincidence. But a powerful truth, misunderstood, can become a spiritual weapon. What if the very act of seeking this knowledge is a test of your character and a final, crucial step in decoding a divine plan? This isn't about being right, it's about being ready. The numbers don't lie, but what do they truly reveal about us? To this point, we've revealed a powerful narrative, a hidden.
The ultimate message of prophecy is not to tell you the date, but to tell you to be ready. The prophetic timeline we've explored is not a countdown to a specific event on a specific day. It is a sign of a completed cycle. It tells us that a final transition is occurring, that a divine accounting is at hand. It is meant to inspire not a frantic rush, but a quiet, confident preparation. Another great danger of interpreting prophecy is allowing it to create division and supremacy. The temptation is to use this newfound knowledge to create an us versus them mentality, to believe that one people group has been elevated at the expense of another. This is a profound misunderstanding of the biblical heart. The prophecy of affliction and deliverance is not about racial supremacy, it is about redemption. The ultimate message of the Bible is one of radical unity. The Apostle Paul, in his letter to the Galatians, states, "There is neither Jew nor Greek, there is neither slave nor free. There is no male and female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus." The fulfillment of specific prophecies to a specific people does not negate God's universal love. Instead, it demonstrates His faithfulness to all of His promises. The restoration of one people does not require the diminishment of another. It is part of a larger cosmic plan for all nations to be reconciled. Think of a beautiful tapestry. Each thread is unique, with its own color and texture. If one thread is broken, the whole tapestry is flawed. The prophetic restoration is about mending those broken threads, about restoring the identity and purpose of every single people group so that the entire tapestry, all of humanity, can reflect its true divine beauty. The purpose of a prophetic timeline is not to create a pecking order. It is to demonstrate the power and sovereignty of a God who can heal the deepest wounds of history. It is a promise of redemption, not of vengeance. It is a story of love, not of hatred. You have been entrusted with a powerful truth. A hidden history has been unsealed. But knowledge without wisdom is a dangerous thing. This is your final test. This is your moment of discernment. How will you respond to this truth? Will you use it to argue, to condemn, to divide? Or will you use it to build, to heal, to unite? The call to action is not to simply understand a timeline, but to participate in a transformation. The prophecy is not about an end date, but about a coming transition. It is a warning to prepare for a spiritual and a physical change in our world. And preparation requires more than intellectual assent. It requires a radical shift in your heart and mind. We are living in a time of unprecedented prophetic fulfillment. The signs are all around us, but the ultimate message is a personal one. It is a call to a deeper spiritual relationship. It is a call to stand in faith, even when the world is shaking. It is a call to walk in love, even in a world filled with hatred. The clock is ticking, but not to an end. It is ticking towards a new beginning, a new era of divine purpose and unity. You have been entrusted with a powerful truth. A hidden history has been unsealed, but knowledge without wisdom is a dangerous thing. This is your final test. This is your moment of discernment. How will you respond to this truth? Will you use it to argue, to condemn, to divide? Or will you use it to build, to heal, to unite? The call to action is not to simply understand a timeline, but to participate in a transformation. The prophecy is not about an end date, but about a coming transition. It is a warning to prepare for a spiritual and a physical change in our world. And preparation requires more than intellectual assent. It requires a radical shift in your heart and mind. We are living in a time of unprecedented prophetic fulfillment. The signs are all around us, but the ultimate message is a personal one. It is a call to a deeper spiritual relationship. It is a call to stand in faith, even when the world is shaking. It is a call to walk in love, even in a world filled with hatred. The clock is ticking, but not to an end. It is ticking towards a new beginning, a new era of divine purpose and unity. You have been entrusted with a powerful truth. A hidden history has been unsealed, but knowledge without wisdom is a dangerous thing. This is your final test. This is your moment of discernment. How will you respond to this truth? Will you use it to argue, to condemn, to divide? Or will you use it to build, to heal, to unite? The call to action is not to simply understand a timeline, but to participate in a transformation. The prophecy is not about an end date, but about a coming transition. It is a warning to prepare for a spiritual and a physical change in our world. And preparation requires more than intellectual assent. It requires a radical shift in your heart and mind. We are living in a time of unprecedented prophetic fulfillment. The signs are all around us, but the ultimate message is a personal one. It is a call to a deeper spiritual relationship. It is a call to stand in faith, even when the world is shaking. It is a call to walk in love, even in a world filled with hatred. The clock is ticking, but not to an end. It is ticking towards a new beginning, a new era of divine purpose and unity. You have been entrusted with a powerful truth. A hidden history has been unsealed, but knowledge without wisdom is a dangerous thing. This is your final test. This is your moment of discernment. How will you respond to this truth? Will you use it to argue, to condemn, to divide? Or will you use it to build, to heal, to unite? The call to action is not to simply understand a timeline, but to participate in a transformation. The prophecy is not about an end date, but about a coming transition. It is a warning to prepare for a spiritual and a physical change in our world. And preparation requires more than intellectual assent. It requires a radical shift in your heart and mind.
In an age saturated with information, true understanding has become a rare commodity. We can consume endless data, analyze timelines, and debate interpretations, yet remain utterly unchanged. The true purpose of prophetic revelation is not to fill your head with facts, but to transform your heart. This is where intellectual debate must yield to personal application. To truly comprehend the gravity of a 400-year divine timeline culminating in our era, you must engage with it on a spiritual level. This means seeking understanding and wisdom that transcends mere academic pursuit. The Bible speaks of wisdom not as cunning, but as the ability to see things from God's perspective, to discern His patterns in the chaos. How do you gain this wisdom? It begins with humility, with a recognition that the human mind, however brilliant, cannot fully grasp the depths of divine intention without divine guidance. It means setting aside preconceived notions, tribal loyalties, and fear-based interpretations. It requires an open spirit, hungry for truth, even if that truth challenges everything you thought you knew. This seeking is an active process. It involves diligent study of the ancient texts, not just to find dates, but to uncover the unchanging character of God. It involves quiet contemplation, allowing the weight of these revelations to sink into your spirit. And critically, it involves prayer, a direct connection to the source of all wisdom, asking for clarity, for insight, and for the discernment to separate truth from error. This discernment is your spiritual compass, guiding you through the often conflicting narratives of our age. The revelation of a closing prophetic cycle is not an invitation to panic, but a clear directive to prepare. This preparedness is dual-faceted, spiritual and practical. The ancient prophets were not just seers of the future, they were often advisors on how to live in the present. Spiritually, preparation means fortifying your inner world. In times of shaking, when familiar institutions and certainties crumble, your spiritual foundation must be unshakable. This means anchoring yourself in timeless biblical principles: love for God and neighbor, justice, mercy, and humility. It means cultivating resilience, peace, and hope, not as fleeting emotions, but as deeply ingrained virtues. It means returning to the foundational truths that transcend denominational boundaries and cultural biases. The early church, facing persecution and social upheaval, thrived because they were spiritually prepared, united in purpose and love. They understood that their true treasure was not in this world, but in the unseen. Practically, preparedness means cultivating wisdom for earthly realities. The story of Joseph, interpreting Pharaoh's dream, led to 7 years of preparation for 7 years of famine. This is a timeless principle. While we caution against apocalyptic fear-mongering, wisdom dictates a certain level of foresight. This could mean developing skills that foster self-sufficiency and community resilience, gardening, alternative energy solutions, basic repair, or sharing knowledge within trusted networks. The biblical model is not about isolated survivalism, but about communal strength. It's about rebuilding connections, creating local economies, and developing systems of mutual support that can function regardless of larger societal instability. This is about building a better world, even as the old one passes away. The raw truth of the 400-year prophecy, with its difficult history of oppression and injustice, can feel overwhelming. It can tempt us towards anger, resentment, and further division. But this is where the ultimate message of the Bible, the message of redemption, love, and unity, must rise above all else. The prophetic fulfillment of God's justice is not about human revenge. It is about divine healing. Micah 6:8 eloquently summarizes this. He has shown you, O man, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you but to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God? The purpose of exposing past wrongs and understanding their prophetic context is not to perpetuate animosity, but to clear the path for genuine reconciliation. True justice seeks to restore, not to destroy. It seeks to heal wounds, not to deepen them. It seeks to elevate, not to demean. The concept of Jubilee is not just about reparations, it's about restoration. A release from bondage, a return to rightful inheritance, and a fresh start. This prophetic blueprint for justice points to a future where healing is possible, where historical wrongs are acknowledged, and where a spirit of love can finally overcome centuries of division. This is the profound hope offered by the prophetic timeline, not just an end to affliction, but the beginning of unprecedented blessing. A new dawn where the principles of justice and love reign supreme.
You are now part of an exclusive group. You have seen the hidden patterns. You understand the profound significance of our current moment. The numbers don't lie. They tell a story of a faithful God who fulfills every promise and every warning. This knowledge empowers you, not to predict the exact hour, but to prepare your spirit, your mind, and your life for a profound transition. The call to action is clear. Seek wisdom above all else. Let discernment be your guide. Prepare spiritually, grounding yourself in timeless truths and cultivating inner resilience. Prepare practically, building community, skills, and systems of mutual support. Embrace reconciliation, justice, and love, becoming an agent of healing in a divided world. The clock is ticking, but it's not counting down to an end, it's counting down to a new beginning. A new era where the divine blueprint for humanity can finally be realized. Will you answer the call? Will you become a builder of this new dawn?